Hi, I'm Ashley from Sunny Made, and today we are going to be trimming half rectangle triangles. Hello friends, welcome back. Last of our series of our half rectangle triangles. Last 2 weeks we learned how to make half rectangle triangles and then 2 at a time half rectangle triangles in the last 2 weeks. Today we are going to tackle trimming them. So get your half rectangle triangles and let's go over to the cutting mat. Okay, so last week we made all of these black half rectangle triangles and I trimmed this one up. Now first let's look at this. This note does not go corner to corner. In fact, if you looked at this, you would think, oh no, I'm going to cut off those points. But because we're looking at a 1/4 inch seam allowance, if you do the seam allowance, that diagonal line is going to come right to the point where you need it to be. So let's look at our first one. Okay, I am trimming this to 2.5 by 4.5. Okay, this is how big I want it. So what I'm first going to do is figure out a 1/4 inch from my first corner up here, which is at a 1/4 inch by a 1/4 inch. That's my first point. Okay, right there. My second corner is going to be down here at 2.5 by 4.5, and a 1/4 inch in is right here at 4.25 and 2.25. Those are the 2 spots that I'm going to be looking for when I'm cutting my half rectangle triangle. So I have my half rectangle triangle. First, I want to line up the diagonal on that half rectangle triangle on that first point. That's a 1/4 by a 1/4. My second line is going to be at that second point, 4.25 by 2.25. Okay, the next thing I want to do is make sure that it fits within the parameters of what I want it to do. If it doesn't, just slide it down a little bit. Slide it down, make sure those points still line up and that you have room to trim off. So what I'm going to do then, trim off the right and the top. Okay, then instead of just lining it up, though, those points should still line up. Okay, at the corner mark and at that 4.25 by 2.25 mark, I am also going to line this up. This should be at 2.5 and this should be at 4.5, and I'm just going to do top and right. Okay, so there we have our first one. Okay, this is the ones with the diagonal going this direction. Now let's look at this one. This does not go the same way. If you're left-handed, you could totally make this work. I'm not left-handed. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to turn it this way. We're still looking at the same points. Okay, point 1 at a 1/4 inch. Okay, line it up on that diagonal sew line. Point 2 is 4.25 by 2.25, and that's just a 1/4 inch in from where I want it. From where I want to trim it. So I want it to be 2.5 by 4.5, and I'm going to do a 1/4 inch in from this direction and a 1/4 inch in from this direction. I don't like this down here. It looks like it might cut off part of my triangle. So I'm going to slide this up a little bit up that diagonal line. Line up those points one more time, and oh, that looks so much better. Gives me a little bit of wiggle room to trim off. Okay, then I'm just going to flip it that way, line up my 4 1/4 line here and my 2 1/2 line here. And as you can see, that point lines up here and here as well. And I'm going to give those last 2 sides done. So here we have one from each direction. And it looks like we're going to cut off those points, but it's not because of the way we lined it up with this. Now, if you have a whole bunch that have to get done at one time, which I do, and I'm going to say, let's do this direction first because I had to, change it around a little bit. I'm going to put some washi tape on this ruler. So first I'm going to put it down here at my 4 1/2 line. Okay. And I'll just wrap it around the edge. So I know that this is the bottom half of my rectangle. Then I'm going to put a second washi tape here on this side. Wrap it around the end because I know that this is the second direction of my rectangle. So what this allows us to do is we can look and go, if I trim right here, it will be able to do all, it won't cut off any pieces. However, I feel like this might be a little tight, so I'm just going to slide it down that diagonal line, line up those points again, and go, yep, that looks good. I can do my 2 sides. Then I'm going to line this up right with the edge, bottom side of my block, and I can just give it a quick trim and that will do that quick. And now I have, let's see, 4 that go that direction. Now if I want to do it this way, if I'm left-handed, this would still work. I'm not left-handed. So what then I would want to do is to put washi tape so it goes 2 1/2 inches this way and 4 1/2 inches this way so I can trim these up. Okay, I'm going to take this one step further. As you can see, I actually put a diagonal line with washi tape as well, going from that 1/4 inch at the top right corner to a 1/4 inch away from that top left corner. This allows me to line up that diagonal line nicely on the diagonal line on my block that I need to trim. I make sure it runs right along that washi tape. And then I can trim the right and top sides. I flip it around, line back up that diagonal line, and then lining up the left and bottom side to finish cutting my block. And there you have it. That diagonal line is so helpful on your ruler. Okay, now that I'm done with these ones, I'm going to pull out my ones that go in the opposite direction. So here I have changed my washi tape on my ruler. I put in the diagonal line. I put the washi tape that goes along the edge. Again, we are still trimming them at 4 1/2 by 2 1/2. And I'm going to line up this diagonal line with the diagonal line on my block that I'm trimming, making sure those edges stay within the size that I want. If I don't like how it's sitting, my block is sitting, I will just move it along the diagonal line until all of the edges stay within the edges that I need to trim. So then I take it and I trim the right and the top. Get rid of those pieces. Apparently I didn't do a very good job. Let's trim that again. Might need to be replacing that blade on my rotary cutter. Then I'm going to flip that block around, line up that diagonal line right there along that edge, and trim my next one. This allows me to do an assembly line fashion where I can do one block after another, get them all trimmed up, make sure that the blocks all turn out at 4.5 by 2.5 with the half rectangle triangle points going in the right direction. So I'm not cutting off the points. I'm not it's not going some wonky way. And then here I'm lining up the edge right along the washi tape, right along the diagonal. And there it is. I can trim both sides. It makes it quick and easy. Okay, here's the end of that series of our half rectangle triangle. Yep, still working on that. Let me know if you'd like to see another video of something similar or a clarification on something. I would be more than happy to do it. Next week, I'm going to show you my finished product of my Mermaid Lagoon quilt. So I'm super excited about that. Find me on Instagram at Ashley_SunnyMade, and I will see you next week. Happy sewing.